So what's the best way to do this?
Yeah. So I just click share.
Share.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then screen.
Mm-hmm.
And share.
Share.
And it should be good. Once you click on the PowerPoint, you can go into present. Oh, looks like you already did.
Okay.
Good.
And then I can just hover over this, and that gets me to the chat stuff, right?
Yes. Yep. Once you get to the first part too, I can sit there and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. Good morning. Hello to everyone on the phone. We're gonna get started here in just a couple minutes.
Is the phone making that noise?
Mine too.
Oh. It's very loud.
Yeah. I like to think every time I go to a meeting, I try to arrange for some sort of music. And here I thought you were all about the evaluation and data and so much more to you. I know. We're all multi-task.
So it says messenger is not inactive. Is that cool?
Oh, it's because I opened my computer. Okay, click OK. You click the little Zoom button at the bottom and go to the second one and click the video.
Okay.
Sorry.
What? What? So I don't know. Do you think we're everybody's here? Should we wait just a few more minutes, or should we go ahead and get started?
Maybe 2 more minutes.
All right.
Yeah, who's missing from last?
Oh, I think there's a few people.
Jackie Benson.
Harry,
Andrew. Andrew sent a message that he won't be here.
Right.
And Candace is on the phone. Yeah. Jackie. Yes.
And just, there's coffee and things to wake up over here. For
Thank you.
anyone that's interested.
Right. Looks good. There's plenty. Yeah. Can the people on the phone, can they see the screen that we've got up right now, the All Things Missouri slide?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well, I say we go ahead and get started, don't you? I think that this is a pretty informal group. If somebody wanders in late, it won't be that difficult for them to kind of get caught up. So, Jamie, would you mind to shut the door behind you there, please? First of all, I guess I'd like to welcome you guys for coming to the second meeting, right, of our 3 All Things Missouri Youth and Family Impact Team meetings. Don't forget, there's the third final meeting is at the end of November. That will be a little joy to come back from Thanksgiving and be able to come to the third of these meetings. Probably, I will also want to say, thank you very much for coming or for joining us on the phone. Jamie and I were talking this morning. This is a really busy time for a lot of us. So the fact you guys are taking some time out to kind of help steward the look and feel of your site is very important to us. So thank you for that. Probably the first thing we should do is kind of go back around the room and do some, hello, come on in. we're just getting ready to do introductions, so you're just in time for that. So we'll do introductions again to make sure that we all know who everybody is. I'll start. My name is Michael Hardy, and I'm kind of leading the youth and family impact area. So my job here is kind of take the information and the ideas that you guys are coming up with, and I'm going to try to incorporate those into the actual site. So, Jamie, what are you?
Sure. Jamie Kleinservy. I'm the leader for the Business and Community Impact Team. I'm also with CARES.
Jacqueline Benson, I'm an assistant professor in human development and family science and a state specialist in gerontology for HES Extension.
Sarah Traub, I'm a human development and family science field specialist.
Brad Anderson, the state specialist for 4-H.
Kimberly Keller, assistant research professor in nutrition, exercise physiology, and state director for family nutrition education program.
Mike Crouch, Northeast Region Director.
Chris Bolsher, Director of CARES.
Melissa DiBartolomeo, programmer analyst, disability specialist, and my coworker Shenting and I will be running the next meeting.
Chris Barnett, I'm heading up the agriculture and environment impact team and with CARES.
Angela Johnson, I'm heading up the health and safety impact team with CARES.
Then he's big student specialist.
Great, and I think that there are a few people on the phone too. Candace, you want to start out?
Yeah, my name is Candace Fisher McLean, and I'm a housing and environmental design specialist in the St. Louis area.
All right, who else we got on the phone?
This is Joe, Britt Rankin.
And one other person? John, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, I'm the same as Sarah down in the Southeast region.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. I think that we'll go over a quick recap of the last meeting we had back in September. If you remember, we kind of broke that meeting up into two pieces. The first half, we went over the All Things Missouri site, kind of gave some history of how we got to the point that we are right now. We also kind of looked at the site itself, ran through some of the things it could do, you know, the report generating tool, the mapping component that's in there, and also we hit upon some of the tools that we've already got loaded into that system right now. And then the second half of that meeting, you guys gave us use cases, which was pretty helpful for us to see how you guys could potentially be using a site like this. So this meeting is going to be set up a little bit differently. We are going to kind of spend the first half going back over those use cases real quickly. All four groups that we met with, not just you guys, but like ag and environment, health and safety, and business and community, they all gave us different use cases. Something that we kind of have found in talking to all four groups is that there's quite a little bit of overlap, right? In kind of some of the things that you do, obviously some of the information you might be looking for. So we decided it would be a benefit for you guys to kind of hear the ideas that they came up with. You know, for one thing, it's probably just interesting to see what the other people are up to. Also, maybe they say something that could spark an idea that would, you know, help us put some data into our side of the report as well. So that's what we're going to do. We'll probably take a little break after that. And then when we come back, we'll start actually going through the data. I think there's some sheets around here that kind of, I don't know if everybody's got one, but the indicators that we've got in the report currently. So we'll look at those. You know, maybe there's stuff. There may be stuff that we can get rid of, you know, because of
Folks online, they have a copy.
They don't, but what we'll do is those can be found on the All Things Missouri website if they go into the report for.
And I believe it was emailed.
Yeah, all that
after our last
all that
meeting,
stuff
right?
is emailed. I think it was sent back out earlier this week as well.
Right.
So as we go through that second half, Today also we'll look for things that potentially we could add, new data that we could put in. Also, we've got some of our categories, and I wrote those on the board here, my very best handwriting. Hopefully you guys can read those. But you know, these are kind of the categories that we put together. Maybe we can, maybe we need to reword some of them. Maybe we need to add new categories to kind of help influence the data. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, and I think we should recategorize them based on y'all's input. This was just a starting point. We're not content experts. We just really rely on you to help us frame this in a meaningful way. So it's just, we started out with something we hope to improve on the category.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just being more direct because this is a great window of opportunity for all of us as we really work with the 4 impact areas on all the feedback that comes in, really informs the field that we'll be doing beginning January 2000.
All right. So, having said that, let me get this out of the way here. We'll start looking at some of the other use cases developed by the other groups. These are kind of like basically high-level use cases.
Can the people on the phone see the screen?
Yeah, that'd be
Yep.
good.
So obviously, you know, during our meeting, we talked about a number of different things. We went back through kind of all of the notes that we took, listened to the video or the recording that we've taken, and kind of boiled those down to a few main themes for each area. You know, once again, as we kind of go through this stuff, there's probably a lot of things that were brought up that may not show up in these. Don't worry about it. We still got all those notes down. These were just kind of like the big landing areas that we kind of wanted to kind of hit on to kind of give an example of what the other groups are doing. So the Ag and Environment group, they came up with a few things. The first one was this citizen science application. It's basically a tool that helps facilitate the engagement of citizen scientists that they've got. They've got a number of people out in the field that do readings on things like algae blooms, you know, health and safety conditions. They look at lakes and ponds and streams, trying to pull nutrient stuff. What they were interested in is basically collecting real-time data from those folks via some type of upload tool. They also were interested in the AgSite replication. The AgSite is actually a current tool that we've got right now, right?
Yes, yes, that describes a number of conditions and data points around a tract of land you might outline. So it describes your soil types or endangered species in the area or other things going on in your watershed. So they were interested in carrying that on through to these to the All Things Missouri. Those reports.
Right. It was built. It's basically like a selection tool. You select like a parcel of land or a multiple parcels, and it gives you a bunch of information about that particular land that you selected. I believe it's used a lot with people looking to maybe purchase new land or rent new land or maybe site selection for different assets they've got. This also, they were interested in something like this because it does have the possibility as a revenue generator for them. So they really wanted to kind of look into that. The third thing was the Agriculture Economics Report. It basically it helps farmers look at data related to agriculture operations and finances all over the place. So they're looking at things like taxes, tax districts, land prices, you know, commodities, things like that. They're looking to help track the economic data and trends in agriculture. And something like this, they could either you know, set up as a standalone site, or they can fold into the AgSite replication. So do you guys have any comments about what the Ag and Environment folks came up with? Okay, so
I love the revenue generation tie there.
yes, that came up a few times actually. Let's see here.
I think as we go through the sequence of meetings, we started out with all things for level set today. It's really around data, but ultimately, how do we have the data inform the type of tools you all want, which are value add, which could be potential revenue generators, or tools that are held to field faculty, campus faculty that can be used as leveraging value add in the meetings that we have. So that's that's kind of the whole arc of this is data is great, but ultimately the data is going to inform it's going to be a base for the tools that we build out in your impact area if you think it's relevant.
I have a question. So do you envision the data points that are selected under these different program areas, will they be tagged so that the same data source will be able to appear under multiple program areas, or is
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
And
I think
social determinants really goes into
Right.
So that's an important point to make sure we're intentional about the tagging of new data as it becomes available.
Yep. Okay, so another group that we met with was the health and safety group. They seem like there's going to be a lot of overlap with that particular group. I think you guys have got a lot of the kind of same interests and study areas with these guys. So what they came up with was a precision social health collection and reporting tool. Basically, it's a program data collection reporting tool that can be used in a variety of extension professionals to kind of help identify the areas of greatest impact. They're looking for something that will let them know if the interventions that they've implemented are actually working or not. So an example of this would be like to stay strong, stay healthy. They kind of want to track that out and see if the things that they're putting in right now are actually having the impact that they're hoping for. Another piece would be the preventative health data. Basically, they're looking for indicators that kind of relate to medical claims, vaccinations, immunizations, show rates for screenings. These are things that are kind of fall into this big push for preventative health. They want to make sure that they kind of get in front of that a little bit. And then they have the emergency landscape or emergency management landscape report. This is something that they were kind of looking at that will look a lot like the crosswalk tool that we kind of talked about the last meeting, where we have like an overlay of different jurisdictional boundaries. So they're looking at something like that. Maybe they can relate to service districts, different demographics and assets. They're trying to essentially show out the trends in emergency management type information and data. So that's kind of what they came up with. Do you guys have any questions about that group? Fantastic. All right. So the third group was the business and community cases. And so this group was kind of looking at site selection and approval for like nutrient educators. So what they were looking at was something that could help nutrition educators to get research and information about different locations in order to be approved for new sites for their services.
I think you're on the.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one?
The health, youth and family one.
Oh, I am.
Or you're reading from
I'm reading
family.
from the wrong one. I'm sorry, I got this thing down. Let me try this again. There we go. All right, the data for the decision makers hub. That makes more sense. Okay, so Extension has got like a ton of data, right? And so what they're looking for is something that could help them build out these custom data sets based on different types of logins. So it kind of like houses, depending on who's logging in, kind of gives them different access to different pieces of information. Kind of a standardized online version of the data for decision makers data and curricula that they have right now.
So basically like a flowchart process. Here's my situation, work your way down to the correct data.
Potentially, I'm not really sure what they're using the data for now, but they're basically the purpose of this use case was there's a lot of data that's housed just internally on someone's personal computer right now, right? So every time someone wants to use that data, it has to go through that request, like an individual request basis.
Gotcha.
So it would be just kind of housing that data in a more automated system where whether it's that person or a subset of users could go in and pull reports for that data, and we could help with streamlining those decision flows. I'm not sure what those look like right now.
For the application.
Yeah.
They were also interested in a workforce development report. Basically, they wanted to pull in some indicators around things like apprenticeship programs, different online programs, skills shortages, basically looking for projected trends of workforce demands, anything that kind of fits around that general, umbrella of the workforce in an area. And then they also have asset network mapping, where they're looking at viewing community assets, right? So this is something that could be would be able to show services and resources available within that particular region or county. And this is something that they were looking at that maybe they could get a lot of help from the on-the-ground extension folks to actually do some like primary data collection for. So.
Michael, would this include, where would healthcare systems fall with the business and community use case and maybe health and safety in terms of identifying the locations of hospitals and clinics? And
I think that's something that actually probably falls in all three of those. And there again, even if it shows up in one, that doesn't preclude it from showing up in another one. We can pull whatever you guys decide into this report. So
right, and the same data set may reflect itself differently in reports. Like you may have something about hospitals in each report, but it may be a different aspect of hospitals. Like one is concentrating on the business of hospitals, the other one's on services of hospitals, or something like that.
Yeah, and that did come up yesterday. And beyond that, there's different ways of looking at those types of facilities. So there's, what secondary data exists on hospitals and providers. We also talked yesterday with the health and safety group about, well, what kind of tacit knowledge exists about different providers. We talked about like AA meetings. So there's no national data repository for that type of information. That's something that could be like a primary data collection inventory for those types of services.
Yeah, that'd be great.
all right, anybody else? All right, so let me go back to what I was looking at before on my notes, which were out of order. The youth and family guys. So this is the group here. This is the kind of stuff that we kind of condensed and came up with as far as like three big kind of like overall use cases. So this is what the site and selection approval tool for nutrition educators. This is what I was talking about, where it would be a tool that could be used to kind of help find locations for these services, and it could also be a map of where the current sites are. You could look at that and compare that to proposed sites. Maybe you're looking for things that would be potential overlaps. Maybe there's gaps in service that you would be looking at. Something like that that can kind of help visually kind of plan strategically down the line, right? This also has some revenue generating possibilities. I think we talked about. I think a lot of different states all have to do the exact same thing. So this is something that if we can kind of nail down with this group, that could be something that we can shop out to other states as well. There was also the program data collection and reporting tool. So this was a tool that could be used by a variety of extension professionals working across programs related to youth and family. So this would be like the after-school program, gerontology, I know was a big question on the last meeting, healthy homes, that kind of thing. And then lastly was the report of education trends over time. And this was actually something that came up just about in every meeting, was kind of getting trends over time type data. So maybe not even just, constrained to education, maybe we could apply that to other things as well, because it seems like that is quite a resource to have. Additionally, there were a few things that kind of, after talking to all the groups, bubbled to the surface that seemed like it would be more of like an extension-wide use case, So the first of these was this county engagement specialist report idea, basically helping the CESs in the field. I know there's going to be a ton of them hired. There's some of them that are actually moving around right now. That would help them get a foundational understanding of the people, places, and economies that they serve. So that would be kind of like a snapshot of their area that they could use to kind of get a good grasp of the issues that that particular area or region is kind of looking at. We also found the county council impact report, which I think we kind of talked about. We may still need to flesh this out just a little bit. Basically, it's our understanding that there's a monthly report that goes out to county councils, and it's something that we could kind of help with along the way. Also, the idea of a researcher's portal, which I think we also still kind of need to work on a little bit. But basically, it would be based on different logins, kind of like different people having different access to data that they would be working on. So that kind of is all of the use cases. You guys have any questions so far? Or any comments on any of the other groups? Maybe you saw something that you want to make sure to bring up for this particular group.
One of the things we were wanting to ask you was around the engagement specialist report, where we kind of envisioned something there that would be able to provide sort of a level set for engagement specialists. Often these engagement specialists are coming with a specialty background in one area or another, and not across all 4 impact areas. And so it would be that sort of here's 3 things you need to know about each one of the areas, or something like that, that would describe your county or counties that you're responsible for. So it would be something that kind of gives you a little footing. I don't know. Certainly, there's data that can be provided into that could expand into here's a list of contacts or something like that. I'm not sure how far down the road we can go with that, but certainly there's opportunities there from our crosswalk tool to pull some of that information in. So wanted to see what you all thought of that with a county engagement specialist lens in mind for that. Is that hitting the mark?
But I think in particular the kind of pulling together the piece of the contacts of people is as valuable as just kind of
the context.
The context. In fact, it's almost, that piece to me is almost more valuable for the CES in terms of application.
Right.
And their role.
The challenge there is we may have, a list of county commissioners' names, but it's certainly not the sphere of contact that CES needs to have. And we're not really familiar with the need for contact information that they have. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there right now.
But it may be something that over time, the CES is going to have to help fill in.
Right.
There you are. Yeah.
And I think, Jamie, I know that you and I talked a while ago about the crosswalk tool. And right now we have the congressional district, the legislative district, and all the contact information in there. But we can't go deeper than that. I think just to reiterate around the, the city council, those very local assets that we can't readily acquire statewide carriers, but the county engagement specialist can acquire them. And at least having a form, and it's not a heavy lift. It's just, if we have a distributed data entry approach, we can fill in a lot of holes very quickly. Is that along the lines of what you guys were talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, with that CED tool, that use case fits that need, I would think, over time.
Yeah, that was the use case back on the previous slide.
Okay, but so, and I think this is really a good discussion, but what we need to land on is going from the abstract to, we need to do that, to the very, very specific. What data fields do we want to have CES folks enter in? So, what are they explicitly, so we can actually code that in and build that as a system? Yeah.
So being in the field and having been a CPD in the past and working in a couple different counties, I mean, I feel like the contact stuff should be done internally. That should be, I don't know, I feel like that might be a waste of your all's time to do something like that.
We're not, you are.
Okay, and I don't know that you're gonna get them to
Here's the
put that
point,
in.
is so you'll log in with your paw print. We can collect, and we have with all the legislators across the state, the
Right.
congressional folks.
That's
What we
wonderful.
can't do, what you guys can do at the county and the multiple county
But
level.
why would that need to be put in? If I have that for my county already, why do I need to put that in a data?
Do you have that already? Where do you have that?
I can get that, but, yeah.
So why would you need, I guess
The
that's the
stuff
question.
that I
That's
would
something
need,
that
right.
we're asking you is
I don't
would you
think you
need
need,
that
I don't think.
or
you need
not?
that.
You're driving the
Right.
process here, to see what components we need in this or not.
So it came up yesterday, and maybe this isn't correct, but the people around the table yesterday were saying something along the lines of, well, we know, especially right now where we're hiring a bunch of new positions
Right.
and this, new people for these CES positions, that knowledge might not be there. And if there is turnover, if someone who's been in the field for 40 years leaves, you're going to have that knowledge leaves with that person.
Mhm.
So it might not be something that people refer to, and maybe it's not on, I think there are inventories or databases of local contact lists at 211, databases on in Bertha, but those only, kind of scratch the surface, or that's too much information to go through, and you might know in the field, like, okay,
Right.
well, this is the right number to call of these 100 or so that are listed. It would be nice to be able to retain that information beyond just an individual, but I mean, that might be more than
I'm kind of coming from
cumbersome.
the perspective of having come from outside, because I moved here from Michigan, so I literally know nothing. In fact, I was going to Marion County yesterday and realized that if it weren't for GPS, I'd never find my way home. So coming from the outside, I think there's significant value in being able to have continuity, and it would be nice if I had a place where I could go in and just pull up everything I needed to see about the who, what, when, where, why in Marion County in one spot.
That's what I was thinking. To Mike's point, the role of the CES is so broad that they're going to be accessing data on their smartphone most likely, and what they need is going to depend on where they are. So it'd be interesting for me if the location on the device could inform the crosswalk, and then that could aggregate the data accordingly.
And while the knowing who the state representatives are, knowing who the city council people are, is valuable information. Knowing who the support people are, who actually makes the things happen, is frankly.
You need to call Betty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not always, it's not necessarily the state rep's name. You need to know who their scheduler is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Being on campus and you're asked to come into some of these counties to give talks or meet with people, it's important to me to be able to quickly understand who I'm speaking with and what that county looks like and what resources are available so that I can be conversant about that. And similarly, from a research perspective, if we want to do more participatory research, community-based research, we need to be more aware of what our counties look like so that we know who to talk to. It's an efficiency thing, and we can't just have one person keeper of that knowledge.
So, and the hope, thank you, and the hope is, by December, we identify or we prioritize what are the assets or what are the information we want to have county folks enter in into the system and prioritize. We don't want to overwhelm with a whole lot of data entry, but what are the key things that we can highlight? That's going to be really key. And the other thing is, if you saw the crosswalk tool already, we have the generic, the county, the House District, Senate District, Congressional District, and Extension Region. That's all public information. But what with a paw print, username, password, logging in, you're going to get a more detailed list, because internally, to your point, we want to know when we go into an area, who are we talking to? The general public doesn't need to know all of that information. Again, that's a value add for us in Extension internally. So what is the break point in terms of what's public and what do we use?
And to your point there earlier, you know, I'm a technology builder, and it's really frustrating to have to do like this in this system, this in this system, this in
right.
this system. So I'm wondering if,
That's what I'm worried, you're not gonna get much
right, yeah.
from
So if
people.
there's either, you know, an integration that we can do or some sort of carrot. Yeah, like if you enter your information, you get some, you know, some kind of bonus, something like, you know, a forum to
And
connect
it may
with.
be better if it comes from the administrative assistant in the office.
Yeah. Okay,
You know,
yeah.
versus your CES or, I worry about, like I see what you're saying, like, well, you need to call Betty. I think you're gonna be lucky if people give those names and numbers up though, you know, into a data system like, into a online, I don't know. I still think people are gonna gatekeep some of that.
Yeah.
And why
I
is
don't-
that? What's the reason?
Because people have this fear that you're gonna be contacting them all the time, and I'm not gonna give someone's name, and God knows who's gonna be contacting them, and I'm just saying,
Yeah, no,
I'm
that's
trying to
very
give you all
valuable.
my, I hear this kind of stuff from,
Yeah.
the fear is that the gatekeep, that people will be campus, that who knows who's gonna be contacting these people, and these are my people in my county, and you call me. If you need to get some, you call me, is gonna be what people, I think the reaction you're gonna get.
We set the permissions initially to the individual person.
Okay, there you go.
Or to the
Perfect.
region,
I
or to
think
the
that's-
regional level. In other
yeah.
words, they have to go to the regional or to the county
Okay,
faculty. And so I hear you. So let's live
Okay.
out where the gatekeeping needs to start. If it needs to be at the individual level or for all the CESs in a region, is it a regional level, et cetera. But we can build a system to help that. I hear you because even before I was an extension, I was told, you know, you need to contact your extension colleagues if you're going to go into county tax.
Yeah.
It's a courtesy.
right.
I didn't do that
And they should know.
because I didn't really understand the protocol. Like
Yeah.
if it's set up a certain way to contact you,
Right.
you know all this information right now.
I'm
Well,
just thinking about the ag specialist in my office. He didn't even want to share his work calendar on his Outlook with his regional director. I mean, it's just, I'm telling you guys what people, that's what,
There's a line there.
I know, I agree,
It's
but
480, because when you
people are very-
involve youth, that becomes exponentially greater.
yeah.
And when we went to an online enrollment system, we had several families saying, well, I don't want Big Brother to have my information. So they
Right.
insisted on handwriting it and mailing it to us. Now, it eventually goes in the same database,
Right.
and that was the mindset.
Big Brother has access to every email, every calendar, everything in your system anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we do need to kind of keep the role of the CES in context, though. You know, the CES is going to be that pivot point. So
Right.
the folks in order for the CES to be successful, the folks in the field are going to have to share.
Absolutely.
They're going to have to, they're not going to be able to gatekeep and have their CES be successful in making the connections CES needs to make. And that's going to be something that's going to take time
Yeah.
for people to, for that cultural shift to happen.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying. But I think if we keep this in the context of the CES tool and how the CES would use this information to effectively engage in that county, it's a different, I totally agree, I think you need to make sure you've got the right folks having the right access.
Right.
But for the CES, it's
Okay.
different.
Well, and don't forget that when we're talking about this engagement specialist report, the original concept of this was really more data focused than contact focused. And we wanted to provide some basic context for your county. You know, how many cows do I have? How many children aged 3 to 8 do I have? Things like this
I think that
was the first concept of that report. And then we branched out into, and we can throw some contacts in here.
Okay.
So probably our initial version of this engagement specialist report is definitely going to have to include that information and have that as sort of level set. And we can probably put in some basic context, and then we've got time to figure out how we're going to integrate this larger system on things and do that. But we need to start having those discussions.
I think,
Well, and my question is, to what extent is that this platform versus an integration with an extension reporting system that would,
Right.
that would record contacts, partner
Maybe that's
agencies?
the better way to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
and again,
And
that's
that's
a longer term
yeah.
thing, but Chris, to push a little bit on the sharing needs to happen. If it's a public official, it should be open and shared internally across everybody. If it is, and if it's a public official and that CES or county faculty person has a personal relationship with that individual, the accused administration contacts me, I've got more info to help you better engage.
Yeah.
So we can build, things to contact me, both with me for that. But if it's writing all the county commissioners, and they don't know 3/4 of them, that should all be public. I mean, we can build it. We don't, I know the contact things, private contacts could be to the individual person, to the individual. And so we've got to start somewhere. We can have some basic high-level public stuff in there. And then let's see how it goes over this next year and then refine it and get more
The
specific.
benefit you have is that there are going to be so many new hires. And so if this becomes, this is the way it is and the thing, and this is what they know from hire date, that's good.
Yeah, okay. Michael, where we doing on time here?
Sorry,
No, we're doing good on time.
Any questions from folks on the phone?
That's a good question. Anybody on the phone have anything to add to the discussion here?
I think it sounds good. I appreciate the discussion.
Great.
This is John. Can you
Yeah,
hear
go
me?
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was listening to the conversation and I understand wanting to have contact info available to a CES. For me personally, I'd rather see like organizations and meetings in there so I can go in and start cultivating my own relationships, because what the prior person's relationship had with that person may not necessarily match with what maybe my personality or what I'm looking for, or there's people that's being overlooked because I went to one person. It kind of limits my ability to build a different base or maybe a wider base.
I agree with John also because it can be quite cumbersome to have to update these personal contacts. There's turnover all the time, and it just seems like you just need to go to the level of identifying some of these organizations and partners on an organizational level, not individuals, because
That might be the level to take it to, you're right.
There we go. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Is that a case where you could actually maybe put like a note part to that, where, I mean, if you did go to a meeting and be like, well, I talked to this person and they really wanted to help us, you just jot that in maybe a non-official context, but maybe just have that for next time you had to go to that meeting.
That's what's been on my mind. I really want, in social science, some streams you might call it an artifact, a place where you come into town, you see, hey, we support 4-H or whatever, you snap a picture, share that artifact and it's location-based, so because it's location-based, you can pull that up when you're in the place where the context would be applicable. And it could be, I'm thinking, everything's an app these days, it's not an app, but if you have some way to quickly take a picture, screenshot it, share it to some place for artifacts, and then tag your location, it's more relevant when you're actually there.
Sure.
That would be really, really helpful and useful and applicable.
everything's dated so that, with contacts and any of that, so But I think as far as individual contacts, for me, when I think about it, I want to know what kinds of organizations are available. Some of these public officials share their names and whatnot, but then I would contact the extension field specialist or CS in that county to ask for specific names I might contact, and who do you recommend I speak to at such and such organization? And I think that's the flow of communication that you're saying people want, and that's what I want. I don't want to pick up the phone and call cold either. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it at least gives me a place to start when I call the CES and say, so here's some organizations that I've identified from the data set that I think would be really useful to contact for the research project I'm working on, or whatever the project may be.
Well, I think it's my understanding that they kind of want that to be the flow.
Yeah.
Right? They want everything to kind of go through the CES. You got who's on site. So I mean, they would have access to all that information.
Yeah.
That
So
totally makes sense.
maybe kind of thinking about the issue of contact, kind of turn on its head. It's maybe not the contact with the agency, maybe it's the extension contact that we're looking at as which extension faculty member has a relationship with that local public health agency.
Well, one of my fears is that people will rely just on that technology as the relationship and instead of actually making personal relationship building.
Right.
But that kind of information would help those of us who are on campus or new to the county, for example, know, okay, I can contact Sarah because Sarah has a relationship with this agency and see what that relationship looks like.
It's pretty offensive to people in the field whenever you find out after the fact that someone on campus has contacted them or is working with them or is coming in for a program, and you're like, guys, I could have helped people get there. I could have helped make that,
It's
like.
the pain of our existence.
Right.
And for years, we keep stumbling over each other.
I know.
So I think what I'm hearing in some ways is we all hear about social networking, social network analysis and all. I mean, we've done variations on that in a way, but we haven't, I don't think, done it right. I think that's something for our team to really be thinking about. How do we really make this a living thing? Because so much around social networking really dies on the vine quickly if it's not something useful. So we got to start very simple and grow those connections.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're getting pretty close to where we're going to take a break. So we'll kind of table the first half of the meeting here. There are some Post-it notes on the table. So the second half of the meeting, we're going to start going through the actual data in the reports. Like I said, looking for things that we would like to add into it, that kind of thing. I will bring up for those of you on the phone, I'll bring up the All Things Missouri site here. So this kind of shows the different categories that we've got, at least. So you can kind of be thinking along those lines. I've got those categories written up here on the board. If you think of something that needs to be put in, a demographic that you'd like to have but that we don't have, just write on Post-it notes, stick it up there. We'll talk about that when we get back from our break. Be thinking about other things, jurisdictional boundaries, that kind of thing that we could try to incorporate as well. So let's take like a 15-minute break. Come back right around 11 o'clock or so.
But yeah, it's a dual purpose break. Jot down your ideas, stick them up there, and grab your coffee.
We got refreshments in the back, so help yourself. There's coffee and.
Sorry to the people on the phone.
Right. You run to the kitchen real fast. So don't.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys.
Okay. Michael, do you want to mute the phone? It's going to get loud.
Sure. Well, mute you guys so you don't have to listen to us eat. Welcome back to the meeting here. We probably should get started on the second half where we actually kind of dive into the data that we've got in there and stuff that we'd like to see if we can get added going forward. So what we've been kind of doing is we'll just kind of break this out by the different categories that we've got. So starting out with just basic demographic data in there. It's a little bit lean, just kind of have some population in here. Is there anything you guys would like to see included in this that would kind of help you guys out a little bit?
So, could we include gender?
Yes, and I think that there's some gender in that, right?
If you click, okay.
Yeah, so there's, we have,
Oh, good, okay.
yeah. So on some of the main, like the
Just under
ACS type data sources, we've got gender, we've also got race and ethnicity for all of those different pieces, so.
Can I make a blanket suggestion?
You bet.
We've made a significant resource investment in the SnapEd tool, so I would like to see those data incorporated here.
Okay.
Under the various categories where they would naturally fit, or new categories if there's not one they fit in. Do they all fit in these categories? I can't remember.
No, they're more like diet, nutrition, food, environment.
We may have to add a category or two.
Yeah.
Something we want to capture too.
But
That's
a
what
lot,
we're
but a lot
missing
of
in
the
categories.
a lot of the data points that you have in the SnapEd report are reported under like business, community, and ag, so they're not new data, right?
Can you maybe in another tab bring up the SnapEd just to make sure everybody's on the same page with what Kimberly's saying here?
Sure.
That's all things Missouri,
SnapEd.
and go to the bottom of the page, the tools and resources. And it's somewhere in there. Yeah, it's over here, right? There you are. So if you look at the indicators for that, yeah, there's a lot of different categories there. Yeah.
Click under family.
And I don't know that we're
behaviors.
necessarily wedded to those particular categories.
But you want these data sets to
Yeah.
be visible through here. One of the ideas though of the impact area based reports is that it doesn't have to get as detailed as a particular topic or subject report for this. It all depends on what you want to do in your impact area.
Right. Well, I don't want to make youth and families all about SnapEd, but
Okay.
Having that data.
This report is nationwide. And what we want to do with the all things, I call it a product line because we're starting with Missouri, we'll be going to other states as well, is, Kim, what is the differential of taking what you've got there in the SnapEd and really going deeper at the state level? I know you've already worked on that in terms of data that you have for the state of Missouri. Maybe we take that out of this national SnapEd report, just leave it national data only, and just do that SnapEd component for the All Things Missouri in your impact area that is state specific.
yeah, I think the only state-specific information that we have in here right now is the program data. Right, there's the site that we've added in. And
How many indicators is that?
Can you expand that, Michael? Program data?
The very bottom.
But it's a starting point. I'm just thinking, as we go down this path together, is it better to leave that just national data and say with an all states effort, you can really get at state level programmatic data? Yeah, we only have 3 right now. It may be 5 or 7 next year. We can grow that out. I'm trying to find the right demarcation.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't put the program data in the youth and family report. Yeah.
But see, the thing is also the youth and family report, that's just one thing. In your impact area, you can have 5 reports, you can have 10 reports, you can have 40 tools. The thing is, I don't know if Marshall and Blake and those folks are going to fund all that. In other words, let's not be constrained by saying this is your impact report and that's it. It's if you have a real need that goes deeper, let's make sure we address that within the All Things Missouri context, et cetera. Whether it's a report or a tool, data. Don't be limited by that. For our team as well, does that make sense?
So this is good, what you were talking about. you want to make sure these indicators are somehow manifested in the,
Yes, because
larger
I think we
report.
were going to direct or suggest some of these particular data points to specialists to look at in terms of deciding what local programming to engage in their coverage areas. Yeah.
Okay, well then that's appropriate then, yeah.
I don't know that absolutely all of these particular metrics would be
Okay.
relevant, but we have some metrics there that have already been identified for our program area. But I want to make sure that we have at
So
least
would you be able to highlight those here?
right
as
this
our
second?
highest
No,
priority?
but I-
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
sometime in the near future, as
Yeah.
the highest priority ones
Yep.
come true, but.
Yeah,
how's that?
yeah, and that's
Okay.
low hanging fruit, so, obviously ports and so forth.
Right,
So that's
it's easy to bring them across.
Yeah,
Right.
so
You
that's,
can bring all of them across.
Angela, and Kim, I know you've worked closely together on this part with the program data. Is that publicly available, or is that behind a username password, or should it be?
well,
That's the question.
it's not program data to the extent that it would need to be protected at this point. So we didn't ever get to that deep enough level where we would want to have it protected. We kind of explored
Well,
various
moving
ways of
forward, though,
doing
that's
that.
the question is not protected for confidentiality, but protected because this is, again, the value add you're bringing around SnapAd and the programmatic data, that is behind, the paw print, that anyone internally can look at that and you can grow that out.
I think that we've identified this as a potential tool to build out, is a way to house program data and do that evaluation that we talked about, that's come up for the Stay Strong, Stay Healthy as well. But I don't think that needs to be necessarily part of the impact area report. I think that we would be talking about that as a new tool build.
Yes.
So maybe
In
tabling
all
that
things
first.
Missouri,
Yeah.
as something, yeah, I agree. I just want us not to think that everything has to be constrained to that impact area report.
Mhm.
Let's think about that as a new tool, Tim working with you on how that can be framed, what's publicly available, what's available in terms of extension. Okay.
You guys have anything else about the demographics? I know that there was a couple of times yesterday when we were meeting, some people expressed some interest in kind of using the age breakouts more like a generation breakouts, to where we could tag those as like, these are baby boomers or these are Gen X or something like that. It seemed like that's in the news a lot. It'd be kind of nice to know exactly who people are talking about. Is that something that would be of interest?
Yeah.
To you guys?
What's that mean to your county or region?
Yeah.
Yeah. So population age 65 plus, can that be broken down more, or is it just?
Yes, I think we have, 65 to 75? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I can't. It's definitely. I think we can get into like the 10-year age group.
Yeah.
Beyond
Yeah,
that.
I'm pretty sure 85 plus is not in for the broken down.
Yeah.
Right.
it's 85 plus.
Okay.
And I know that
Trends,
right.
and then trends, yeah, would be a great thing to have.
And I know that whenever we first put this together, we skewered this kind of to the youth side. And I know that this last meeting, you were like, well, we need to put in more of the older population. And we certainly, that's something that we would love to get in there, especially going back to the other meetings, talking about like the fall data and stuff like that. That would be kind of things like that to help really kind of round this thing out.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the data that I was interested in is in health and safety, but it's right that we could pull some of it over here anyway, right? Isn't that?
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that data
It can live in both places.
Yeah, it sits on the server. We just have to plug into it. So
Yeah.
anything on the sheet we can add into this report.
Okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know if this would go under demographics or maybe, because I was thinking we have this infant child health category, and it would be great to have an older adult health category. But one of the things that I'd like to know is older adults who are living alone or homebound. these suggestions, I think, get more complex in terms of actually being able to figure this out. But I think living alone would be something we could find data on. Homebound, and then family proximity. So how, their closest family member, how many miles away they live. Social isolation is a very hot topic with older adults. Loneliness, social isolation, social participation. So I know we talked about getting more information about some of the organizations that are accessible in their community and urban. You can kind of get a sense of social participation from some of that. But and going to back to the conversation brought up about social networking, it really is part of that conversation too, like family networks and
Right.
But who do these older adults have nearby that they can rely on that are, and it typically is family who's expected to shoulder the burden of caregiving and providing any kind of support.
Right.
So do they have anyone in a 30-mile radius?
Right, and when it was even brought up yesterday, it's like, so somebody who's in a rural area, that affects them way more than somebody who's like out here in Lenore or something like that, that's already kind of got that built-in support around it.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Seeing if there was some way that we could kind of isolate those people as a separate piece.
Yeah.
So Generation Z is living with grandparents to a far greater extent than Generation Y was. So, those, even if you can pull from census data and extrapolate, that would be really valuable.
Yeah.
That might give us some sort of blanket indicator, but I don't know about that relationship nearby.
Yeah, that would be
a challenge. That would be a challenging data to support, other than through survey or something, maybe.
Tax data may give you a clue, whether the joint returns or not.
Yeah. Typically with adults, you wouldn't have that, so. But yeah, maybe. I was gonna ask, is there any issue with language barrier in the elderly population? Is that not really a thing in Missouri, or?
Sure, it's a thing. You're talking about like language brokering that's happening with older generation and immigrants.
Right, right.
Mostly in southern Missouri. Yeah, I mean, it's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to speak on any certainty about that, but I think.
So just to put this out here, in our health and safety report, we have a category, kind of a subcategory of demographics that we are calling vulnerable populations.
Yeah.
Is that an appropriate framing for youth and family as well?
Yeah, I actually wrote vulnerable older adults. I was thinking we could frame it that way.
Yeah.
Because that's where they're living alone.
Yeah, and that's where that came up yesterday.
Yeah.
Living alone, older, right. Also younger populations as well.
And then the information about disease and comorbidities, that layered with living alone. I mean, you can start to, put together a portrait of who the most vulnerable older adults are.
Yeah, and I remember one of the challenges in working with a lot of the secondary data is we will not necessarily know that this person who's age 65 to 70 also has this disease. But we can say, okay, there's this disease rate in this area, and there's this population of elderly persons in this area.
Yeah.
But as far as is there an exact one-on-one relationship with an individual, we can't bring that out with this data.
Candace, do you have anything that you'd like to jump in on real fast before we move on to the next piece?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. So that kind of is demographics. Let's move on to the education attainment part. So this is a lot of graduation rates, that kind of stuff, like how much schooling you got into. Is this of value to you guys? Is this, appropriately named as far as the category?
I'm not sure what the correct term is, but it'd be interesting to see how the schools in the community are rated.
Yeah.
I just reviewed 3 scholarship applications written at maybe a second grade level by high school students who go to country schools. And it'd be interesting to be able to cross-reference some of that stuff.
They have those school rating sites.
own business.
Out there, right, Angela? Are those public or are those all proprietary data sets?
Kind of like great
I'm
schools.
not sure,
Yeah, I didn't know that you can. I
Right,
mean,
right.
you could probably
Okay.
do some.
Is this stuff something like the realtor sites? and things
Yeah,
like that?
and
I
Zillow.
thought Desi
They
had
might have
something.
Does
accreditation.
Desi have well, they have accreditation, but that doesn't always say the same thing as what you're getting
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
I mean, they
yeah.
have like annual, yearly progress, and you can get those types of metrics, which I think is all that those
Okay.
ratings are based on.
Okay.
It's
So like
on
test scores.
performance and trends in performance. Yeah,
There's some tie in with funding from No Child Left Behind or whatever.
Yeah.
maybe so. Yeah, and,
I
and
think
all
there's
of that information is
Free and reduced
public.
lunches are tied into that too, right?
Yeah, they are.
That's
Yeah.
a changing program.
And see, we're kind of contemplating people that would go into a college type or university type environment. Is that like the associate's level degree, is that supposed to also include vocational training, where somebody wouldn't necessarily, be getting a degree, they're getting job training and joining the workforce?
I'm not
I
sure.
don't
Do you
know.
know?
I
Nancy,
do
how
not
that works?
think that the associate's degree includes those professional or subject matter training.
Almost,
schools, no.
almost as a subset coming, out of the
Yeah,
high
that'd
school
be useful.
graduation, you've got the college piece picked up,
Mhm.
but we're kind of missing,
Yeah.
the population that's going to both
The
vocational
trade
training,
schools.
trade school,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
even military,
Hmm.
Oh, that's-
I think we can get military.
or workforce.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it seems like there's been a real push lately.
It's under infrastructure, education infrastructure.
Is it?
Is it? What do we have here? Oh,
And trade.
that's the trade schools themselves, but it's not telling you how many are attending.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably good to know
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
kind of
Sure.
what the population is really doing
yeah,
in terms of where they're headed
yeah, I agree.
coming out of high school.
So the other thing about childcare centers, the number of nationally accredited in rural areas is probably very, very, very low.
Yeah.
Could we, well, it doesn't really make sense to do that. Put the number of licensed places, but you can get that off of.
That's,
But this would be one-stop shop.
Well, not only that, but you could also then start to get into the ratio of licensed facilities to the number of children.
Oh,
that type
that
of
would
thing.
be really good.
I would suspect in the
That would be
rural
helpful.
communities especially, that I actually used to own a daycare center. It seemed like a good idea. But in the rural areas, daycare is really gonna be more in-home.
Yeah.
Right.
Care as opposed to nationally accredited centers. And then, I mean,
There
well-
are some licensed, but it's
they
hard.
should be licensed.
Right.
I would
Well,
think.
okay, you're right.
But there's definitely kind of an
Right.
underground market of that.
Right.
But even with the national accreditation, it's been a while, but that wasn't, as a center owner,
Mhm.
I didn't really care.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not really, I don't know that that's a really strong data point in terms of useful.
Yeah. So more along the, I like what you said, the number of licensed, even spots versus the number of children. I recently learned that Sedalia, that to me is a large town, has a huge shortage. I mean, no opening. Someone has a almost 3-year-old and they can't find an opening.
You can find places where
So
they
to
have
know
plenty
that-
of care for 2 years and up, but
Right.
no infant care.
Infant care, right.
And what the, so your licensing data will tell you
Right.
what they're licensed for
Mhm.
the licensed centers.
Well, this kind of is a, a good example of where there's things that kind of overlap areas. The business folks yesterday were talking about the same thing because, trying to build the workforce, they need to have somebody there to watch the kids.
Childcare,
So, that was a really important thing that they brought up as well. So.
Well, there's definite overlap across areas, because when you think about what's happening with kids coming out of high school, that goes right to economic development, workforce development, having, childcare goes right to those issues. For instance, large business isn't gonna move to a community or open a facility in a community that doesn't have a childcare infrastructure, that doesn't have a housing infrastructure, you know. So it's interesting data to have.
But also, when my kids were in childcare, it was a very poor time for us.
Yeah.
But actually, newspaper articles came out as the cost of childcare in Columbia, Missouri is equal to Boston.
I
It's-
believe
it's
it is
crazy.
outrageous.
So we need to get at
More than tuition.
cost.
Yeah,
is
right.
really
Here.
Definitely.
We were super excited whenever our kids got out of daycare. It's like, we just got another job.
Right.
We bought a cruise.
Huge pay
Yeah.
raise.
I bought a new vehicle. We had an aggressive payment schedule, and the payment ended the month before daycare kicked in.
Yeah.
We had a child, and it was the same.
You know,
Yeah.
we did the same thing. We're like, we better just get used to this pain, right? So that's what we did. We just started paying out what we were going to be paying for childcare up to that point. And it was kind of like, oh, man.
And they don't appreciate
Kind of on
Oh,
the, kind of on the same subject, when you get to public schools, before and after school care
Yeah.
is
Oh,
a thing
yeah.
too.
Right.
We want to work with Terry
Yeah,
on
we're
that.
already, we're talking
Yeah.
to Terry about that.
They've got that.
Very
Terry.
focused,
Mhm.
yeah.
Big issue in our rural areas.
So we get the license information from DHSS and,
I mean, really, that's probably all you're going to be able to get to. The people that are running unlicensed facilities aren't necessarily going to be forthcoming with them.
There's an option here for a license exempt program. I don't know what that means
Those
exactly.
are like, religious, like if, like the Lutheran Church has a daycare, they're non-exempt.
Oh, okay.
Actually an
So that
issue.
could be a pretty big group of people.
It's
Yeah.
huge,
And they're
especially in rural
listed.
areas, I
They'll
would think.
be in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ones that are not at all, yeah.
And that's
a whole
going to
other
be
issue.
more in-home people that are, you know,
Yeah.
taking in a few kids.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know what the rules are in Missouri. I think in Illinois, if you had 4 or fewer, you didn't have to
That's
go
how
through
it
the
is here.
process.
Yeah.
So would, do you have to have licensure to participate in a child and adult care food program?
Yes,
Would that be another?
yes, I believe so.
Usually you have to be licensed for
Okay.
things like that, or
Yeah.
the CCR&R was child care
Resource
resource
network?
referral.
Yeah.
You had to be licensed to
Yeah.
participate in the reimbursements you got through that. Why did I remember those issues?
What about, brainstorming here, what about a process again of data acquisition? I know the registries, they're really poor often, I think, at the state level. You don't really know what you're getting. Could it be that county engagement specialists or field faculty around 4-H, youth, et cetera, can begin with just entering some very simple 3 attributes or 5 attributes related to daycare centers, and being able to enter that in for a county. Now, in rural areas, it may be easier than in urban areas, and that's where our team can work with you all on acquisition, where there may be some databases for Kansas City or St. Louis. We can't go everywhere, but it's an idea of where do we fill in the holes? Or maybe starting with the registry and seeing what isn't accurate and then filling in those holes. I'm wondering if this might be something, because it deals with workforce, and it's a real issue in terms of being able to get out there in the workforce, et cetera. Is that an idea? Do we even want to approach that?
I think it makes sense.
We could have a separate document that kind of fleshes this out further. This is, again, it doesn't have to happen immediately, but if we have this in the hopper and as people are starting to use All Things Missouri for data input,
Yeah.
something very simple so they're not seeing this as onerous or outside their workflow, then we can introduce the right things at the right time.
And what we should do is take this as an idea that we can do around childcare, but put it on the list as we come up with more ideas that we get prioritized. So maybe there's something more important that we want to spend CES time or extension specialist time collecting than this, but we definitely want to get it on the list.
Or maybe maybe a partner organization, but every time I hear from Marshall's meetings and all that is that workforce.
wage data in here? Or was that under one of the other impact areas?
There's information on wage and earnings, that we've been working on with, Pat Curry directly, that I think it will be manifesting itself to the business and community, right, Jamie? Report. There may be some wage data in there already. I'm
I'm
sure.
in there.
Yeah, I
Over in
think-
the business and community.
Yeah, we have the jobs and earnings by
Oh, is it-
sector in
is it
business
the
and
economic
community.
factors?
It's not on this one, but it's something that we can.
Yeah, that would be, how does that, then
Yeah, I don't know if
relate
it's
back into this
necessarily-
report?
I don't know if it's necessarily a thing for this report, but
Okay.
thinking yes.
Yes, there's wage data in general, and again, that may be something that's pulled into that, overall county or community profile, and not done in these more details.
So I'm struggling a little bit with envisioning exactly what the product would look like.
Right.
So
There's
what
gonna be
does
multiple
the
products.
user product look like? So for the CES report, I kind of get what that might look like. Would there be a customizable product where I could go in and say, well, I want to see, all the education resources, I want to see the wage data, I want to see housing data, so I can just kind of a la carte, pick and choose.
Right now, we were thinking we would kind of have the data grouped under each one of the 4 impact areas. And so it would be listed here and you get to choose amongst that. But as far as like pulling over something from ag into this report, that wasn't the vision right now, but that's something that's possible.
We have talked about, well, maybe start with this template for your impact area, but then, we don't have this built in our system yet, but having the ability to like search for additional terms or pull from a
that might
list,
be the answer.
drag in.
Here's why I asked that
That
question.
would be
because
nice.
There are certainly times I can envision in my past experience where we've had cross-programming opportunities and being able to pull in
Yeah.
data from multiple points allowed us to better develop a program across a couple different program areas.
Yeah.
I think we could consider, again, with your Paul print, being able to do that meta level across the 4 impact areas. Then you save it to your.
So basically build your own custom
Right.
report.
So it's
right?
not a public thing, because the public, they want it containers, something simple to work with. But internally, maybe having a way that you can reach across the 4, we can have a meta level reporting tool that you can pick and choose.
That's probably one of the concepts we should point out is that this will be more broadly accessible. We want to keep it easy for folks.
Okay, that
And if you want to get into the more complex stuff, maybe that's something a little bit more behind the scenes that is, like Chris says, exposed to extension folks in general, but
I would argue, we gotta get beyond the maybe, because time's ticking. And if you say yes, like to your point, I want to be able to do this behind the wall and I can save it, we need to put that together. In other words, put that as a priority. Now, we don't know if it'll happen or not, we need to see where all the things shake out between the funding and all that, but and I'm sorry, Chris, I just want to, these are ideas, but you all need to help us say yes or no, because there's a lot of things that we could do together.
I certainly wouldn't speak for others, but for me, in my role, I could see a report where I could pull pieces
drag and drop.
being very useful.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm potentially hearing in this discussion is youth and families is a huge area. So thinking about nutrition and health, maybe people who are housed in that specialty area would have a template report that draws from these indicators that may overlap more or less with home and families and 4-H. So those templates may look different, but would default to some of the predetermined areas that programmatically make sense. But they would have then individually the ability to modify.
Yeah.
From what their local interests.
Does that make sense to you though?
That makes sense.
Okay.
That's a lot less,
I like that.
You like that? We still want something, sort of a baseline
more of a
for
snapshot.
youth and families though.
Right.
That would be out there that everybody would get a certain picture of youth and family. And then maybe have the more specialized topic areas with the ability to pull in from other places, things that we didn't consider quite fit in there, but if you need them for that day,
Right.
And or maybe that as you have behind the Paul print is a set of indicators that cuts across the 4 areas, the SnapMed tool, internal, for example, and then you can save that as the list of indicators that is your report that you use on an ongoing basis. So we have the publicly available.
That's what Mike was saying, and you would save it, so that you could come back to that report, you could save 10 different kinds of reports.
Or maybe it's a case where you could share it. Maybe there's other people that are kind of like in your same group, and you're like, well, I've already got this thing set up, you know.
And an
This is what I
application
use.
might be, you know, if, for instance, in my role as regional director, I'm going out and meeting with a group of people, you know, that group of people may have interests across a couple different areas, and now I can go in and I can plug the information I need to tailor my conversation to that one.
Right.
And if it's looking at your location, then I might find out from there, who do I need to go to see if they'll share that with me?
Mm-hmm.
With my contact.
That's great, yeah. That brings in that contact information.
This is very helpful.
Full circle
You
here.
like your location.
Location, like real estate.
Well, we talked about the, like the childcare stuff, kind of digging more into the older people is like adult daycares. Is that something that would be kind of interesting? Is that data even exist out there? Is that something that?
Senior centers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that falls under like community resources. I was thinking of some of those, which we could pull in here. Senior centers, adult day centers, of course, are different. I noticed that in the health and safety, something that needs to be added there, or we have it is under clinical care, rates of dementia diagnoses. I was surprised with these other. Yeah, unless I missed it, I looked at it a couple of times.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's available. That did come up yesterday, in terms of other, other mental health diagnoses for older adults and, yeah, like Alzheimer's and schizophrenia, where it was,
Yeah, well, it wouldn't fall
noted.
under mental health. Dementia would not.
It would, okay.
But, yeah.
As you get into, you use the word community resources. I think yesterday you used the word the assets, being able to capture assets. And I know that, Michael, you're going to be going through this exercise here. Is it the other category that may capture assets? Adult daycare. I mean, let's think about what assets you need from your impact area that we need to capture. It may not exist. It may exist. So we have to do the searching on that. And then if it doesn't exist, where do we go around data acquisition for that down the road?
So looking back at the two categories that Michael has up right now, under education, you have attainment, you have infrastructure. There's things in there that we should drop out. And then we've already talked about several things to add, but is there anything we're missing that needs to be added that hasn't been touched on yet that you had in mind?
So I have a question about the colleges, universities, trade schools piece. That's pure infrastructure. Is there a college there? Would we care where people are choosing to go to college? For instance, for those who are going to college, is there a place where we would gather that data?
From our county, where people.
Yeah, where people are actually going to college?
Is that even tracked?
Yeah.
I would imagine at the high school, you know, the high school counselor.
Yeah, that's going to be,
And
how many
getting
high
to
schools
that-
are there in Missouri?
Getting to that is tough, but I'd be willing to bet, for instance, if there's somebody within Mizzou that can tell you, you know, how many kids they're pulling, or how many students they're pulling from.
Department of
different parts of the
Education might
state.
know where their people are coming from.
We're working on identifying how many 4-Hers come to Mizzou, but it's very limited.
We are
Michael,
too.
did you want to speak on that very thing?
Yeah, so we're working on the same project also, right? You know, we've been kind of tasked with trying to figure out the kids who have done the 4-H online registration, you know, how many of those are actually going on to one of the 4 campuses that make up the system. And I think that it's an imperfect database at this point. We're trying to match these things up. We're getting mixed results
This is with
on
Allison.
yeah.
So,
But
this is great because even though it's not perfect, what we need to do is to set up for the 4-H online are what attributes do they need to start collecting moving forward?
Right.
So we can do the matches. Now, what's interesting is a legislator would want to know, wow, 4-H is such a valuable program. I don't care if they went to MU or to Truman or what did they go to Iowa State?
Right.
So that's the next step for us is, taking all higher ed institution, community colleges, and finding out how we can tag that is what did 4-H provide, leadership, et cetera, to get them to that next level. So this is an exciting.
Right, and if you're in 4-H, it's like the value there isn't just sending them to MU. The value is getting them to any kind of like even we mentioned trade schools and stuff like that. That should be something that I think should be tracked as well. In state or out of state, because you are you want to be sure and take credit for the fact that you're helping mold these kids to go live a bigger life, right?
Yeah. So the original question was around where are kids going after high school, right?
Yeah, and whether whether there would be a purpose for knowing that.
And I don't know.
And that was what I was going to ask you. Why do we need to know that?
Honestly, for.
And do you need to know it specifically, or do you need to know it just as this percent went to college, this percent went to trade school? Well, what do you need to know about that?
I'm actually just kind of thinking of it in a more broad sense.
Sorry to.
It'd be kind of cool if we knew, for instance, that we had lots of students coming out of high school in Audrain County and they're coming to the zoo. Well, what makes Audrain County different from Randolph County, and why are they coming? I don't know that extension necessarily is particularly interested in that, but there's people who would be.
Well, I know we can get a hold of by county the students coming.
But
we don't know exactly.
Where else are they going? Again, I don't know. It's one of those things. Sometimes it's interesting to know stuff just because it's interesting to know it, not necessarily because there's a purpose.
Does he track that, Angela, at all?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking around to see what I can find. But I haven't found anything like it by county origins and destinations.
Find out what they're searching.
Yeah, really. That'll give you a good idea.
So Michael's heading up that thing with Alex.
Yeah.
It'd be good. I
think we have a meeting set up.
I mean, it's our youth development program,
Yeah,
university, so if we can say, yes, we're driving this, and that's a huge piece of data.
There's a lot of data on at the college level, at the university level.
And I'm sure there is a disproportionate percentage of the 4-H universe that comes to Mizzou. At least my experience in Michigan was everybody who was in 4-H, they wanted to be a Spartan, when they got out of school.
Well, there is some solid data on 4-H participation in general nationwide, and that those youth are much more likely to go on to higher education.
Right.
So it correlates with some other things that are out there.
Well, I think, we were talking about that. I grew up in northern Missouri, and so like you may not necessarily go to MU, but you certainly went on to another school, even if it's like a regional school or out of state, Iowa State or Kansas State or something like that. It just seemed like it'd be interesting to track those kids also, figure out where they go.
Michael, I want to do a time check. You got about 20 minutes left.
Sure. So maybe this is a good time to move on. We've got another piece here. Let's see. This is the infant and child health category. You guys like what this is called? I kind of look through there. Maybe we're missing things in here. Maybe we can make some adjustments to this. What do you guys think about this category?
Well, I think I'd echo what Jackie was bringing up earlier, is we need a broader lifespan.
Right.
So some chronic disease kind of information, and older adults.
Would the older adult be a parallel category? You'd have older adult health,
I
it
would
would have
think
some of these same factors in them, like the physical activity or.
Yeah. Because especially thinking about that northern tier of counties, that's a sizable proportion of the population up there is older, mid-age older.
Yeah, I mean, rural counties is becoming older across the nation, but Missouri definitely is one of the states that has a higher proportion. So I'd like to see it as a separate category, I guess.
But some of these
Yeah, yep, similar items.
That'd be pretty easy to fill out. I mean, CMS is a great resource for getting data on older adults. And there's just a lot out there. You could easily fill up a category.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would pull a lot of the health data that is already in health and safety, I guess, about different diseases, add dementia, and then the resources that are important for older adults, AAAs in the area, senior centers, adult day centers, and the health systems.
Are there like specific sources out there that you use to get this data currently?
No, I'm
Okay.
hoping you right?
Done. Done.
Got it.
Got
it.
I mean, I think you just have to, like the AAAs, like go to their website and they'll show me where they exist in the state, but that's all I'm gonna find from them.
Right.
Yeah, same thing. Senior centers.
So we don't have anything like asthma or anything like that in there right now, do we?
Not in here right now, but I mean, there again, we do have data we can.
Yeah, it's again, easy to find, well, able to find that data for older adults because of CMS Medicare population, but difficult for the general population for any type of disease, health outcome, condition rather.
I think asthma though might be,
Particularly used.
yeah, I think that might be available and.
Yeah, the Missouri County level study has, it asks about a couple of different chronic diseases, or and that's one of them, so we can pull that.
Maybe in my model?
They have most of the county level study data, so I think.
Is there a way to get to mental health issues?
That was brought up yesterday.
Yeah. Potentially, a lot of the, well, we have data on like substance abuse and addiction with opioids, but in terms of, it was also suggested that we potentially look at VA for like PTSD. So I say that's on our radar, but I don't have any great, general population.
Yeah, like
resources
anorexia,
right now.
suicide attempts.
I was going to ask about suicide. That should be something.
Yeah, suicide mortality we have, but in terms of like overall attempts, we could probably get something on ER visits for self-harm, potentially.
Touchy area and very difficult to get.
Yeah.
And you can run non-disclosure pretty quickly.
There's a
I'm
lot,
sure
and
that's what
especially
helps.
in Missouri, in our rural areas.
Yeah.
With data suppression.
And there's a lot of talk about like opioid stuff, maybe groups too. Seeing if we get some of that to drop in before as well. If that'd be of use to you guys.
Well, I mean, even if we can't find data on rates of different mental health outcomes or diagnoses, maybe it's just the resources in those communities. So mental health clinics and practitioners.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you have for through DESE, can you get, because I saw like homeless children data, could we get, is it possible grandparents or other relatives raising children? Is that something we could get from them?
I don't know if that's in DESE, but we do, that is something that's collected in the American Community Survey in terms of like family composition. And I think, do we have that as an indicator somewhere? Isn't that used in one of
I have
the reports?
read that, and I don't know if it's one of our
Is it in
indicators.
social and economic?
It's not in here, but
No.
That would be.
But yeah,
But I have seen that. I don't know if it's because I was looking for something else on the ACS site,
Yeah.
stumbled into it, or we've actually got it already as a piece. So
No, I don't know how much Youth and Families uses this one, but first the teen parents might be another one.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we have teen births.
we have teen births, yeah.
Is it there?
Yeah.
Cross-reference to impact on mental health. What about like cigarette sales, alcohol sales?
e-cigarette.
Yeah.
I
They
feel like
can-
yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is too far down in the weeds, but it's on the top of my head because I oversaw Genesee County in Michigan where Flint is located. And you've got a lot of older, especially again in rural areas, older infrastructure. One of the reasons they were able to uncover what was going on in Flint with the lead was because they gathered the data and the data points. And I don't know whether it really fits here or if it's an infrastructure thing, but nationally there is and is going to be ongoing a push for replacing lead infrastructure. And when we're talking about infant and child health, if there's a concentration of heavy metals poisoning, lead poisoning, and youth.
One of the things that's been happening in Missouri over recent decades is the trend to move from your private well into the rural water system, and most of that's happened in the post-lead era. So a lot of your rural is maybe in better shape than your old urban areas with
Right.
the lead distribution system.
The issue with the lead poisoning is you said a lot of that's happened after it became a big issue. The lead poisoning issue is what happened before because you can't get it out of the system and it affects developmental, cognitive development on an ongoing basis. And there are things nutritionally and other things you can do to mitigate the long-term effects of lead poisoning. So anyhow, it's just one of those things that when I think of infant and child health, that comes right to the top of my head because of my experience.
And one of the things that's popping up in like the school and community garden literature is the issue of these urban gardens in urban soil. Yeah. And so there's, that can be an issue.
We did actually, in Flint, we did very specific research to that kind of issue with regard to, because people are watering poison water. And it turns out it's not so much about what's, at least in this case, it was not so much about what's in the soil, but, are you still watering, it's what's on the surface, as opposed to because it's not pulling it up, out of the soil. When we talk about the social and economic factors, the other thing I've been contemplating is housing types. And I see some of the indicators here. It's interesting to know what the housing types are in terms of what's the percentage of rental housing versus owner occupied. It's also interesting to know foreclosure rates. The higher percentage rental housing tends to be a more transient community. Different issues with a more transient community than not. But foreclosure rates, it'll be interesting to see if that starts to tick up because we are, again, in the lending industry starting to do zero down subprime loans. So, those factors and housing types are as interesting as anything that's listed here in my mind.
Well, and Andrew, even though he couldn't make it with us today, he actually emailed me a few points also, and he was interested in looking at like tax information, tax stats to add into this. So I mean, we could even put things like that in here if it makes sense for everybody. Additionally, I know that maybe maybe like broadband access or access to online resources, if that would fit into this also.
Be huge. Also joblessness.
Yeah.
And what else? A couple of that key industries, like some places you have the meat packing plant that's the job provider, so the fortunes will rise and fall with that. At least somebody outside coming in would know where to look.
And some of the housing stuff might be contemplated in the context of your discussions around business in the community, but it impacts across multiple.
Right.
And don't forget what we were saying before is that we could have this one sort of generic youth and family report out there to give that baseline picture of the conditions of youth metrics related to youth and family. And then we could have internally that report tool you can drag and drop a lot of other pieces of data into something that you would look at yourself that wouldn't necessarily always be a snapshot of youth and family, but maybe needed for that particular instance. I mean, well, we can put a lot of things into this. If it starts straying too far from the topic of youth and family, you start diluting the message a little bit, would be my concern.
I was jumping down to social and economic, sorry.
Oh, no.
That's great.
Well, the whole thing is the youth and family.
Oh, okay.
But, we can put a lot of stuff in here.
What about like teen employment data?
What is that?
Teen?
We have,
That's fairly easy to get to.
yeah, we have a measure of, teens that are not in school, and not employed, so what the term for that is, you know, but,
It's just up there.
yeah, so not in school and not employed.
Last one.
Kind of like youth disengagement is kind of what that falls into the bucket of. Does BLS report by age group, or is that just ACS? Did we get that?
We're not getting it by age group.
Okay.
It may be in there, but
Yeah.
I don't think they are. And I think
Yeah, that might be
ACS kind of
possible.
looks at everybody age 16 and up, right? They're like,
Yeah, but they
working
might have
age.
breakouts. I'm not sure that we're, but you
I
can look
don't
into
know
that.
if they have those breakouts.
Yeah.
You know, it might be interesting to just contextualize the social and economic factors is what the current federal poverty level is.
That's a good sort of baseline piece of information. Number of people at the 100% poverty level, but also, what the dollar level is.
Right,
for
so
people
like
to know.
for a single head, I mean, you wouldn't have to have necessarily the whole
Definition,
range, but
yeah.
Is there a way to also look at children in like multi-generational housing? Those data?
Well, we had the children living with grandparents.
We do?
We can get
We
that.
talked about it,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Is that,
That's what I'm
is
talking
that
about.
cover it, or are there other situations?
Like multi-generational.
Well, it
but,
could be,
Children and parents living with grandparents?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might not be captured. Yeah.
I suspect the US Census data might,
Yeah,
I think
they
that
have
they
those.
collect that also, yeah.
US Census data is a little aged at this point, but
Well, we use the American Community Survey, so it's an estimate, but it's out every year. That's with
yeah,
5
that
years.
should be available.
yeah, I do think the census breaks down not just grandkids living with grandparents, but if there is another adult, like a middle generation in the home too.
Yeah, and if it's something that's really high priority and it's not like a line item in the ACS, we can use the microdata to pull those estimates.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just also going to add retirement data.
In terms of number of retirees in the area
Yeah,
or something?
and
Okay.
how many, and then
We talked about yesterday the number of or percentage of population that's pulling like Social Security would be a potential way to look at some of that.
yeah. I don't know if there's data on this, but I mean, a lot of people obviously are maybe formally retiring and pulling Social Security, but they're still working part-time somewhere else. And I would like to figure out, how many hours, well, like how many hours, or how many people are working part-time, if there were maybe a.
Yeah.
Because there's a misconception that when people are retired, they're just sitting back and have all this free
Right.
time, and
Right.
most people can't afford it, and they go and get, another job, or, so.
Divorce rates?
Yeah, we talked about marital status, didn't we? Is that,
I think that we did.
About
That's probably
adding that
something
to
we-
demographics.
Is that under demographics?
Because I heard somebody mention children living in single-parent homes.
That's on
that's
there.
on there, yeah.
But I don't think you're right. We don't have,
There's no specific data in ACS on divorce, but I could we could look into it. Yeah, I think you should be able to find it, so maybe.
Yeah,
the
we talked the last time we
registry-
met about family structure. I guess I thought that was definitely getting added, is that we don't know if we can get those data, but
Yeah.
divorced, remarried,
Mhm.
step family, children living across households.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left of what we've kind of designated for the time of the meeting. We want to get you guys out in time for lunch. I did want to check in with Candace. Is there anything that, if you've been sitting there on the phone, is there anything that you'd like to add before we kind of start to wrap this up?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that everyone's been saying.
Okay, perfect.
What was there someone else said?
No.
John and,
Other folks, I believe.
So what we'll do is we'll kind of like last time, we're recording this, so we'll probably next week, I would guess, sometime, we'll try to send out an email with links, kind of what we found, some notes on there attached. Going forward, if you guys want to take these, paper lists home, if there's things that you think of, write them down, email them to us, that's fine. And then don't forget that our last meeting is that last week in November. We're going to really hit the user experience stuff with Leslie Jing and kind of talk about the site and how it works, and go into that a little bit, and probably also do the recap on these data indicators that we're kind of starting to hone in on. So once again, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for being engaged and giving us a lot of really good things to think about. So,
Are we on the end of November meeting? Is that last Thursday? Same.
Yeah,
yes,
29th, yeah,
it's
2
after
o'clock.
it's after Thanksgiving, I remember.
And it's gonna be in a different room.
And we'll send out reminders about that as we get closer as well. So, I mean, it's not like anything else is going on, right?
Yeah, instead of come back for Thanksgiving, because you can get to the
Yeah.
All
Maybe
right.
maybe you'll get another bagel or another.
Yeah.
Had to get raspberry.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have an afternoon meeting, you have cookies.
Yeah, most of the pressure's on.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
And we'll send this out if you have more comments, ideas, Michael's been coordinating the group, or I think you're also getting communications from Jamie on this, send us back information. And thoughts, you may come out up here and have an epiphany tonight. You need to let us know what to do. And thanks, Candace.
Thank you, Candace.
Do you have, can you get data from, the